The following video contains spoilers for 1922's Nosferatu and 1931's Dracula and, the actual book. Fun fact about me, I have a probably unhealthy obsession with how different societies and times deal with the story of Dracula. I think it's fascinating how he projects whatever we're hung up about onto the vampire himself. I also think it's fascinating, funny, and mildly terrifying to look back on the absurd things we were hung up about in the past. In this video essay, I will attempt to analyse why filmmakers can't keep their hands off the story of Dracula, and what the films made as a result say about the culture they were made in and the story of Dracula itself. So I know this channel is about movies, but I think we should at least touch on the book to start with. One could probably do a whole video essay on the book, but as previously advertised, this channel is about movies, so I'll only be touching on it. Dracula was written by Bram Stoker in the late 19th century at a time when sexuality, especially in women, violence and challenging racism were taboo subjects. These things were all personified in the character of Count Dracula, mixed together in a disturbing and disorientating way. However, if Stoker had been merely using this to shock and reinforce the contemporary audience's prejudices, the Count would be a far inferior character. Instead, Stoker suggests that through refusing to acknowledge these things, we are not addressing our own inner Draculas. In fact, the horror of the novel comes partly from the bloodsucking and gore, but also from the suggestion that the true monsters lurk in ourselves. However, as time went on and society learnt that, while violence is still pretty nasty, there is nothing wrong with healthy sexuality, and challenging racism is in fact a great thing to do, Count Dracula began to personify new hang-ups as a result of this social change. For example, in F.W. Murnau's 1922 adaptation, Nosferatu, Murnau subverts the idea that sexuality is something to be feared by analysing the result of fearing sexuality. Like the novel, Nosferatu has Dracula, or Orlak, and Jonathan Harker, or Hutton, represent different versions of sexuality and masculine gender expression. While Count Orlak embraces his sexuality to the point where he can't control himself, Hutton fears sexuality in all forms, and his relationship with his wife Nina is grotesquely childlike. Nina's death is a result of there being no happy medium in a world where sexuality is vilified. For example, when she states, "He is coming, I must go to him," a montage of both Hutter and Orlak trying to reach her plays. Her relationship with both Hutter and Orlak are unhealthy in the extreme, but in a world where sexuality is a taboo, she has very few options. Unlike most German expressionist movies, Nosferatu doesn't use distorted sets, but slowly eases the film from realism to a nightmarish swirls of shadows and terror, demonstrating how, although it seems harmless, vilifying sexuality slowly drives people insane. Dracula was revisited again in 1931 with the Todd Browning adaptation starring Bela Lugosi as the Count. Thematically, this was a more faithful, if not oversimplified, adaptation of the book. In 1931 USA, the Great Depression was happening, so by having an evil monster living in a castle and exploiting and corrupting Renfield, Lucy, and almost Mina, you could argue that Browning's movie was a critique of wealth inequality. However, almost all the characters in Dracula are rich. Unfortunately, the one thing which sets Lugosi's Dracula apart from the other characters is the fact that he is foreign. Just as the people reading Stoker's novel feared the people from other countries due to the fragility of the British Empire and therefore vilified them, people in the USA were bitter about wealth inequality and wanted someone to blame. Personally, I think the difference between Dracula and Nosferatu is what separates a Dracula movie from a great Dracula movie. Is whether, by presenting Dracula as something alien, the movie panders to the audience's prejudices, or asks them to reflect on the darkness inside themselves, their inner Dracula if you like, and questions why they find his character so repulsive. In conclusion, Dracula is a versatile and visually interesting story, which not only continues to inspire each generation of filmmakers, but reflects that filmmakers' values, and maybe even the values of the society they're from, back at themselves. Thanks so much for watching. Comment below your favourite Dracula movie and what video essays you'd like to see in the future.